Today, we're about to explore the stories of rich people who got eaten alive by deadly animals. From a weekend hike, where a property owner walked beneath hidden claws, to a venture capitalist who leaned on a gate that released an apex predator. The first story takes us to Vance Holbrook's evening walk that would end 40 feet off the trail, in the jaws of a patient hunter waiting in the shadows above. It was April 7th, 2015, in rural Colorado. The evening was cool as the sun set behind the mountain ridge. The private estate covered forested land at an elevation of roughly 7,800 feet. Dense pine and aspen surrounded the main residence, with hiking trails cutting through the property in multiple directions. Vance Holbrook was 51 years old. He had built a real estate portfolio focused on commercial developments across the Rocky Mountain region over the past 20 years. He purchased the Colorado property 3 years earlier as a weekend retreat. He lived alone and visited approximately twice per month, often hiking the trails in the early morning or late evening. Wildlife officers had documented increased mountain lion activity in the area during the previous 6 months. 2 sightings were reported within 5 miles of Holbrook's property. A neighbor mentioned seeing tracks near a shared fence line in March. No warnings were posted on private land, and Holbrook had not installed motion-activated lighting along the trails. On that evening, Holbrook left the main residence at approximately 6:45 p.m. He wore running shoes, athletic pants, and a lightweight jacket. He carried a small flashlight but no other equipment. He followed a trail that looped through the forest for roughly 2 miles, returning to the house from the eastern approach. Visibility was limited to about 30 feet in the fading light. The mountain lion, also known as a cougar or puma, is North America's largest wildcat after the jaguar. Adult males weigh between 115 and 220 pounds and can leap up to 40 feet horizontally. Their bite force exceeds 400 pounds per square inch, targeting the neck and skull. They are solitary ambush predators that attack from behind or above, most active during dawn and dusk. They attack humans when hungry, threatened, or habituated to human presence. Holbrook reached the halfway point of the trail at approximately 7:05 p.m. The path narrowed through a section of dense undergrowth, with visibility reduced to less than 20 feet. He moved at a steady walking pace, using the flashlight intermittently to check the trail ahead. The mountain lion had been stalking him, moving parallel to the trail. Wildlife officers later found tracks suggesting the animal had followed for some distance before positioning itself on a rock outcropping 12 feet above the trail, approximately 15 feet ahead of Holbrook's position. When Holbrook passed beneath, the mountain lion launched downward. It struck him from behind, driving him face first into the ground. The impact fractured 2 ribs and knocked the wind from his lungs. The animal's claws tore through his jacket into tissue. Holbrook attempted to push himself up and twisted partially onto his side. He managed a brief sound before the mountain lion's jaws closed around the back of his neck. The bite crushed through muscle and tissue, damaging cervical vertebrae. His arms went limp within seconds as the spinal cord was compromised. His legs kicked weakly twice before stopping. The entire struggle lasted 15 to 20 seconds. The animal maintained its grip for nearly a minute after movement ceased, then dragged the body roughly 40 feet into dense brush. The flashlight remained on the trail, still illuminated. The mountain lion positioned the body beneath low-hanging branches and settled into a crouched position nearby, watching and listening. Over the next several hours, the mountain lion fed intermittently, focusing on the chest and shoulder areas. It consumed portions of tissue from the upper torso, opening the chest cavity and feeding on internal organs and muscle. It worked methodically, consuming approximately 8 to 12 pounds of tissue before covering the body with leaves and debris. Holbrook's absence was noted the following afternoon, when he failed to attend a scheduled meeting. A colleague contacted authorities, who arrived by early evening. A search team located the flashlight at 7:30 p.m. and found Holbrook's body shortly after, partially concealed in undergrowth. The cause of death was severe trauma to the neck and spinal cord from the bite, which crushed vertebrae and severed critical blood vessels, leading to rapid unconsciousness and death within 1 to 2 minutes. The body showed deep lacerations to the back, shoulders, and scalp, along with significant tissue loss to the chest and upper torso from feeding. The case was ruled accidental death by wildlife encounter. Wildlife officers tracked and located the mountain lion 2 days later, approximately 2 miles from the attack site. The animal was destroyed due to its involvement in a fatal human encounter. The property was later sold by Holbrook's estate. Holbrook's death demonstrated that even on private property, wild predators remain unpredictable and lethal. Thousands of miles away in the Bahamas, another wealthy individual would soon discover that luxury resorts offer no protection from the dangers lurking just beneath the surface. It was July 19, 2016, in the Bahamas. The afternoon was hot and humid with minimal cloud cover. The luxury resort occupied a private cove on the island's western shore, featuring a protected beach area and shallow tidal channels. Graham Westfield was 46 years old. He managed a hedge fund based in Connecticut and had arrived at the resort 4 days earlier with his family. The property advertised itself as a premium destination with private beach access, water sports, and guided snorkeling tours. Westfield had been snorkeling twice before during the trip, without incident. Resort staff had mentioned the presence of nurse sharks and small reef sharks in the area during the initial safety briefing. No warnings were given about bull sharks, though the species is known to frequent shallow coastal waters throughout the Caribbean. The tidal channels connected the cove to deeper water approximately 400 feet offshore. A small dock extended into the channel, used primarily for kayak launches and paddleboard access. On that afternoon, Westfield left the main beach area at approximately 3:30 p.m. He wore swim trunks, a rash guard, and snorkeling gear. He entered the water near the dock and swam into the tidal channel, moving away from the beach toward the channel's mouth. He was alone. The nearest other swimmers were approximately 150 feet away, closer to shore. Bull sharks are among the most dangerous shark species, known for aggressive behavior and tolerance for fresh water. Adults weigh 200 to 500 pounds and reach 7 to 11 feet in length. Their bite force exceeds 1,300 pounds per square inch. They hunt in shallow coastal waters and investigate prey through exploratory bites that cause severe trauma. Westfield reached the channel's mouth at approximately 3:45 p.m. He floated on the surface, looking down at the sandy bottom 12 feet below. The current was mild, moving water slowly toward the ocean. He adjusted his mask and began swimming parallel to the channel's edge. The bull shark approached from deeper water, moving into the channel from the ocean side. It was approximately 8 feet long and weighed an estimated 350 pounds. The shark swam beneath Westfield at about 10 feet depth, circling once before ascending. The shark struck from below, its jaws closing around Westfield's left leg just above the knee. The bite severed the femoral artery and caused massive tissue damage. Westfield was pulled underwater immediately. He surfaced briefly, thrashing and attempting to stay afloat. The shark released its grip and moved away, circling at approximately 20 feet. Blood began spreading through the water in dark red streaks. Westfield remained at the surface, struggling to stay afloat, but weakening rapidly. His movements became less coordinated within 20 seconds as blood continued pumping from the severed artery. The water showed expanding clouds of blood within 40 seconds. Westfield's attempts to swim toward shore weakened with each stroke. His head dipped below the surface twice before he lifted it again. A resort guest on a paddleboard 100 feet away saw the disturbance and blood. He began shouting and paddling toward shore to alert staff. Westfield's movements slowed significantly as blood loss reached critical levels. His arms moved weakly, no longer generating momentum. He went under approximately 60 seconds after the attack, losing consciousness from severe blood loss. His body drifted in the current, suspended about 10 feet below the surface. The bull shark circled for another minute before approaching. It made an investigatory pass, bumping the torso with its snout before biting into the abdomen and tearing away tissue. The shark released and moved away, circling at a distance. It made one additional pass, biting briefly at the shoulder before losing interest and swimming toward deeper water. Resort staff reached the location approximately 20 minutes later using a motorized rescue boat. The shark had departed. They recovered Westfield's body floating 30 feet from the initial attack site. Multiple bite wounds were visible, with significant tissue loss consistent with shark interaction. Staff attempted resuscitation during the trip back to shore, but there was no response. Westfield's skin had taken on a pale grayish tone from extreme blood loss. Other guests were cleared from the beach as the boat approached. Westfield was pronounced dead shortly after reaching the beach. The cause of death was massive blood loss from the severed femoral artery. When this major artery is cut, a person can bleed out within minutes, as the heart continues pumping blood until pressure drops too low to sustain life. Time of death was estimated at 3:47 p.m., 2 to 3 minutes after the initial attack. Additional tissue loss occurred after death. The case was ruled accidental death by wildlife encounter. The resort temporarily closed the tidal channel and installed shark netting within 1 week. Westfield's body was returned to the United States for burial within 48 hours. Westfield's fatal encounter proved that even in carefully managed resort environments, nature's predators can strike without warning. Halfway around the world in India, another experienced traveler would learn that confidence and expertise mean nothing when you venture too close to a patient hunter's domain. It was February 11th, 2017, in northern India. The morning was warm and humid with overcast skies. The hunting concession covered mixed forest and wetland along a slow-moving river. Stuart Bellamy was 53 years old. He held an executive position at a pharmaceutical company based in Massachusetts and had been hunting internationally for over 15 years. He arrived in India 6 days earlier with a licensed guide and tracker. The guide had briefed Bellamy on local wildlife hazards, including the presence of mugger crocodiles in the river and connected marshes. He emphasized avoiding the water's edge during early morning and late evening, when crocodiles are most active. On the morning of the incident, the group tracked a boar through dense forest for nearly 90 minutes. The trail led toward a marshy area adjacent to the river, where vegetation thinned and the ground became waterlogged. The guide recommended stopping and waiting for the animal to move into open terrain. Bellamy chose to continue, moving ahead by approximately 30 feet. The mugger crocodile is a medium-sized species native to the Indian subcontinent. Adults reach 10 to 15 feet in length and weigh 400 to 700 pounds. Their bite force exceeds 2,000 pounds per square inch. They are ambush predators that wait motionless in shallow water, striking with explosive speed. Once they secure a grip, they perform a death roll to disorient prey and drag it underwater to drown. Bellamy reached the marsh's edge at approximately 8:20 a.m. The water was murky, with visibility less than 6 inches below the surface. Reeds and tall grass bordered the open water. He moved along the bank, rifle raised, scanning for movement. The mugger crocodile was positioned in the shallows roughly 10 feet to Bellamy's left, submerged except for its eyes and nostrils. It had been motionless for over 20 minutes. When Bellamy stepped closer to the water's edge to navigate around a fallen log, the crocodile lunged forward. The animal covered the distance in less than 2 seconds. Its jaws closed around Bellamy's right leg just below the knee. The force fractured the tibia and fibula immediately. Bellamy fell backward, dropping his rifle. The crocodile pulled him toward the water, dragging him approximately 8 feet across the muddy bank. Bellamy grabbed at vegetation and exposed roots, but could not stop the momentum. He was pulled into the water within 10 seconds. The crocodile performed a death roll, rotating its body multiple times while maintaining its grip. The motion caused additional fractures and dislocations throughout the leg. Bellamy's head went underwater with each rotation, surfacing briefly between rolls. The guide and tracker reached the bank within 20 seconds. The guide fired 2 shots into the water near the disturbance, but could not see the crocodile clearly due to murky conditions and thrashing. Bellamy surfaced briefly, face up and gasping, before being pulled under again. The water showed violent disturbance for another 30 seconds, then went still. The crocodile had dragged him to deeper water and held him submerged. The crocodile maintained its position in deeper water, holding Bellamy's body on the bottom. The guide and tracker remained on the bank, but could not safely enter. They observed occasional disturbances on the surface over the next several minutes, As the crocodile adjusted its grip, small air bubbles rose intermittently, then stopped completely after approximately 3 to 4 minutes. The crocodile held Bellamy underwater for approximately 4 minutes until drowning was complete. It then began consuming its prey. Crocodiles cannot chew and must tear flesh by rotating their bodies and thrashing violently. The crocodile performed multiple death rolls while gripping different parts of the body, tearing away large sections of tissue from the legs and torso. Over the next 90 minutes, the crocodile fed extensively, consuming portions of both legs and the lower torso. It worked methodically, using its powerful jaws to crush bone and strip flesh. The crocodile had positioned Bellamy's remains against a submerged root system, allowing it to tear away tissue more efficiently. A recovery team arrived approximately 3 hours after the initial attack. The crocodile had moved to a different section of the marsh. Bellamy's body was recovered from water approximately 6 feet deep, roughly 50 feet from the initial attack site. Significant portions of both legs had been consumed below the knees, along with tissue from the lower abdomen and hip areas. The cause of death was drowning. The crocodile had held him underwater until his lungs filled with water and he could no longer breathe. The right leg showed severe crushing injuries from the initial bite, with the tibia and fibula both fractured in multiple places and the knee joint completely dislocated. The extensive tissue loss occurred post-mortem. The time of death was estimated at approximately 8:24 a.m., roughly 3 to 4 minutes after the initial attack. The case was ruled accidental death by wildlife encounter. The crocodile was tracked and destroyed 2 days later by wildlife officers using baited traps. Bellamy's death illustrated that even guided expeditions in remote wilderness cannot guarantee safety from ambush predators. In South Africa, a successful businessman would soon realize that bringing wildlife onto your own property doesn't make it any less dangerous. It was September 28, 2014, in rural South Africa. The night was cool and clear, with a waning crescent moon providing minimal light. The private estate covered bushveld and grassland, bordered by a game reserve on 2 sides. Edmund Harlow was 48 years old. He owned a boutique hotel chain operating across southern Africa and had purchased the estate 5 years earlier as a personal retreat. He visited approximately once per month, often hosting business associates for weekend stays. Local staff had reported leopard tracks near the guest cottages during the previous week. One groundskeeper mentioned hearing vocalizations at night, consistent with territorial marking behavior. The region had experienced severe drought conditions for 3 consecutive months, with natural prey populations declining sharply. Rangers from the adjacent reserve had documented multiple livestock kills within a 5-mile radius over the previous 6 weeks. Harlow had been informed, but considered the presence of wildlife an asset rather than a concern. No additional lighting or fencing had been installed. That evening, Harlow dined alone at the main residence and retired to his cottage around 10:30 p.m. The cottage was located roughly 150 feet from the main house, accessible via a gravel path with minimal lighting. He wore casual clothing and carried a small flashlight. He walked alone, as staff had left the property by 9 p.m. The leopard is one of Africa's most adaptable and dangerous big cats. Adult males weigh between 80 and 200 pounds and can leap over 20 feet horizontally. Their bite force exceeds 300 pounds per square inch, typically delivered to the throat or skull. Leopards are solitary nocturnal predators with exceptional strength. They are highly opportunistic and will attack humans if they perceive vulnerability or if natural prey is scarce. Harlow reached the midpoint of the path around 10:40 p.m. The area was bordered by dense shrubs on both sides. He used the flashlight intermittently, sweeping it across the path ahead. The leopard had been positioned in the shrubs to the left, approximately 8 feet from Harlow's position. It had been motionless for over 10 minutes, watching him approach. When Harlow passed the leopard's position, the animal launched itself forward. The leopard covered the distance in less than 2 seconds, striking Harlow from the side. The impact drove him off the path and onto the ground. The animal's claws dug into his torso and left arm, tearing through clothing and into tissue. Harlow's flashlight fell and rolled several feet away, still illuminated. The leopard's jaws closed around Harlow's throat within seconds of impact. The bite clamped down on the windpipe and carotid arteries, compressing both. Harlow attempted to push the animal away, his hands grasping at the leopard's head and shoulders, his legs kicking violently. He managed a strangled, gasping sound as his airway was compressed. The leopard maintained its grip, adjusting its bite to secure a better hold. Harlow's struggles continued for roughly 40 seconds, his movements becoming less coordinated as oxygen deprivation set in. His hands, which had been clawing at the leopard's face, began to weaken and fall away. His legs continued involuntary twitching even as his upper body went slack. The leopard held firm, its jaws locked around his throat, compressing the trachea and occluding blood flow to the brain. After about 90 seconds, Harlow's body went fully limp, though occasional muscle spasms continued briefly. Blood spread across the ground beneath him, seeping from puncture wounds in his neck and lacerations across his torso. The leopard maintained its grip for another minute after movement ceased. It then began dragging the body off the path, pulling Harlow roughly 30 feet into the shrubs. The animal positioned the body beneath a dense thicket, wedging it between low branches and the base of a large bush. Over the next several hours, the leopard fed intermittently, focusing on the chest and abdomen. It consumed portions of internal organs and muscle tissue, eating an estimated 12 to 15 pounds. Harlow's absence was noted the following morning when staff arrived at 7 a.m. A search of the property located the flashlight on the path around 7:45 a.m. Harlow's body was discovered shortly after, partially concealed in the shrubs. The cause of death was asphyxiation and severe trauma to the neck. The bite had compressed the windpipe and carotid arteries, cutting off both air and blood flow to the brain. Death occurred within 2 to 3 minutes of the initial attack. Secondary injuries included deep lacerations to the torso, arms, and face, along with significant tissue loss consistent with predation. The leopard was tracked and destroyed due to its involvement in a fatal human encounter. Examination revealed it was a healthy adult male, approximately 7 years old, showing signs of recent weight loss consistent with reduced prey availability. Harlow's tragic end proved that unfenced boundaries and minimal lighting create perfect conditions for nocturnal predators. In the frozen forests of Russia, one final story would demonstrate that even the most secure enclosures mean nothing when human error opens the door to the world's largest cat. It was January 12, 2018, in the Primorsky region of far eastern Russia. The afternoon was bitterly cold, with light snow falling intermittently. The private wildlife facility covered forested land and housed several large predators in reinforced enclosures, including 2 Siberian tigers acquired through a licensed conservation program. Derek Leland was 43 years old. He worked as a partner at a venture capital firm based in New York and had invested heavily in wildlife conservation projects over the previous decade. He purchased a significant stake in the facility 3 years earlier and visited twice per year to oversee operations. The facility employed 4 full-time staff members responsible for animal care and maintenance. The tiger enclosure covered approximately 2 acres and featured double-gate entry systems designed to prevent accidental access while animals were present. Standard protocol required 2 staff members to be present during any entry, with animals secured in a separate holding area. That afternoon, Leland was alone at the facility. Staff had been given the day off for a local holiday. Leland had expressed interest in photographing the tigers from the outer observation area and entered the perimeter fence around 2:15 p.m. He wore heavy winter clothing and carried a camera with a telephoto lens. The Siberian tiger is the largest cat species in the world. Adult males weigh between 400 and 700 pounds and can measure over 10 feet in length. Their bite force exceeds 1,000 pounds per square inch, strong enough to crush bone. They are solitary apex predators that rely on stealth and explosive power. Even captive-raised tigers retain their predatory instincts and will attack if they feel threatened or challenged. Leland entered the outer observation area around 2:20 p.m. The area was separated from the main enclosure by a secondary gate, which should have been locked. The gate had been left unsecured after maintenance work 2 days earlier, with the latch mechanism not fully engaged. Leland did not notice the gate's compromised state. He moved toward the secondary gate to photograph the tigers through the fence. One tiger, a male weighing approximately 550 pounds, was positioned near the gate, roughly 20 feet away. When Leland leaned against the gate to steady himself for a photograph, the unsecured latch gave way, and the gate swung inward under his weight. Leland stepped back immediately, but the tiger moved forward through the opening. The animal covered the distance in less than 1 second. Leland turned to run, but managed only 3 steps before the tiger struck him from behind, driving him face first into the snow. The tiger's claws dug into his back and shoulders, tearing through the heavy clothing and into tissue. The animal's weight, over 500 pounds, pinned Leland to the ground. The tiger's jaws closed around the back of Leland's neck within seconds. The bite crushed the cervical vertebrae at the base of the skull. Leland's body went limp immediately. He made no sustained struggle and produced no sounds beyond the initial fall. The tiger maintained its grip for approximately 1 minute. It then began dragging the body deeper into the enclosure, pulling Leland roughly 60 feet from the gate through the snow. The camera remained near the gate, partially buried. The tiger positioned the body near a cluster of evergreen trees that provided shelter from the wind and snow. Over the next several hours, the tiger fed on the body intermittently, focusing on the upper torso and thighs. It tore open the chest cavity and consumed portions of the internal organs. The tiger also fed extensively on the muscle tissue, stripping flesh from bone in large sections. The animal consumed an estimated 35 to 40 pounds of tissue, working methodically through the night. It used its powerful jaws to crack open ribs and access the organs within. Between feeding sessions, the tiger rested nearby, guarding its kill. Staff returned to the facility the following morning around 8 a.m. They found the outer gate open and the secondary gate ajar. Leland's body was located within the enclosure around 8:30 a.m., partially covered by snow and positioned near the tree line. Significant portions of the upper body and legs had been consumed. The cause of death was a broken neck at the base of the skull. The tiger's bite had crushed the vertebrae where the spine connects to the head, severing the spinal cord and causing instant death. Secondary injuries included deep lacerations to the back, shoulders, and scalp, along with extensive tissue loss consistent with predation. Time of death was estimated at approximately 2:20 p.m. the previous day. The case was ruled accidental death by wildlife encounter. The tiger was sedated and secured without incident within 2 hours. An investigation determined that the secondary gate had been left unsecured due to maintenance oversight. The property was later sold and converted to residential use. Thanks for watching. If you liked these stories, click here.